the more you are getting used to suffering states, the more it is going to become difficult to walk out of the suffering state.
Mm-hmm.
If you are able to move your attention and feel being part of something vaster, in that experience of connection, what happens is your mind actually lets go of the suffering. It is able to walk out of the suffering state.
Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award winner, former journalist, mom, wife, and just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. And as you know, this podcast is all about finding that joy in the good, the bad, and the in-between. How to add perspective to our lives, how to add peace and calm and gratitude to our lives. And today's guest is going to be able to do that. Preethaji is a transformational leader. She's the co-founder of the renowned O&O Academy in India, and she's the co-author of The 4 Sacred Secrets for Love and Prosperity, a guide to living in a beautiful state. And she co-authored that with her husband, Krishnaji. She and her husband have been seen on several platforms, including TEDx, Forbes, Huffington Post. They have mentored many people around the world, leaders, including Usher, Tony Robbins, and Hugh Jackman, among many others. Today, and really the reason I wanted to talk to Preethaji again, she has been on this podcast before, is because we really, as a global society, so many of us are suffering right now. We are suffering in fear and anxiety over what happens next, as we have seen coronavirus change so many things in our lives and upset the economic well-being of our world. We've also now in America, we've seen a lot of fear and a lot of anger over a racial divide. And in this conversation, we're going to talk about both. We talk about how we can come together as one and stop separating each other. We talk about how the individual, how you have the power to transform human consciousness. Think of that power. We talk about how that works. And Preethaji is also going to walk us through the Serene Mind Practice meditation. So let's get to it. I am so excited and glad to have you back on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming back on.
So happy to be with you back again.
And this is a time where so much of our world is in chaos, so much is in crisis, and it almost feels like suffering is inevitable when people are losing their jobs, they're losing people from coronavirus, they're losing their livelihoods and what they've set up for their entire life. And of course, now in America, we're also talking about a racial divide and a lot of violence and a lot of hate. Is it possible to walk out of suffering during this time?
We don't have options, Daniel. The truth is, if we continue to suffer, there's going to be a greater divide.
Yeah.
And we would really not be able to find solutions to the current crisis that we're all struggling with. Earlier, we thought we're a flat world and we thought it was because of globalization or the internet world. But today we are one together in a pandemic. And unfortunately, it is not only a health pandemic, it is an economic pandemic. It's pandemic in terms of, like, it's causing disturbance in probably every aspect of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And there is increasing mental stress, there's increasing relationship problem, there is a mental crisis, there is a health crisis, there is a financial and economic crisis. At this point of time, if we allow ourselves to dwindle or move into this vortex of suffering, probably the virus would pass one day. Probably it would leave us like what happened to SARS and MERS. It's not going to continue. Or the bad thing is, if it's going to continue like what happened with the cholera or a smallpox, it's going to be with us for a long time. But what needs to happen at this point of time is a more calm, more peace, so that you have the light to help yourself, you have the light to guide so many people around you. Imagine you being agitated, you being like internally so disturbed, not able to act, not able to bring intelligence to whatever you're doing. We're going to only add fuel to the fire. So it is important that we are experiencing a deeper calm, a peace. We have to nurture it at this point of time. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen because if you're going to allow, you're going to be in the vortex of anxiety, and your anxious thinking is going to create more anxious thinking. It feels like humanity has a Velcro for anxiety, Velcro for suffering, Velcro for fear. We need to walk out of that in order to experience we need to nurture a beautiful state. We need to practice. We need to do our meditations, nurture that beautiful state of calm, especially right now.
Yeah. So what are some of the first steps for the person listening who's like, I am not feeling calm. I am feeling very anxious. What are some of those first steps to start nurturing that state?
I would say start with your breath. Mind, body, and consciousness are not separate. They're actually like the sides of the triangle. So if you're impacting one, you're impacting the other two. So when I say breath, in ancient India, breath is considered to be the reins of a horse. It allows you to control your mind. It allows you to expand your consciousness to feel one. So start with your breath. I know it is very difficult for so many, and I've been in touch with people from all over the globe, east and west, and it is the same situation everywhere. But it is important to nurture this calm. At least if you're able to start with your breath, if you're going to breathe slowly, if you're going to bring attention to your breath, and slowly you will be able to see your breath. If you slow down your breath, you're going to impact your mind. You're going to nurture this ability to move out of that suffering, move out of anxiety, and to feel calm. I would suggest the serene mind practice, because the constant recurring word that we hear is anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression because of the uncertainty that we are currently facing, not knowing what to do. I would say do a 3-minute practice, which is the serene mind practice. So it kind of helps you to declutch yourself from that state of anxiety. If you probably need to do a brain scan now, right now we would have an swollen amygdala. So it is important to declutch the neural activity from that part of the brain. We need to activate the medial prefrontal cortex that is responsible for greater calm, greater connection, greater wisdom, and greater intelligence to flow through us.
Wow.
To the serene mind practice, I think it is available online. It is also available on the Breathing Room app. You can check it out, and it's just 3 minutes. And slowly but surely, you'll be nurturing a beautiful state of calm.
I love that you compared the breathing to the reins of a horse, taking control of that. Can you walk me through, especially for people who are new to this, what that looks like, what paying attention to breathing looks like in their lives?
To explain a little more, when I said always thought about these three being the mind, body, and breath being the three sides of the triangle. So if you're impacting one side, you're impacting the other two sides. So if you're impacting on your mind, you're impacting your consciousness and your breath. If you're impacting your breath, you're impacting your mind and consciousness. Or if you're impacting your consciousness, you are going to breathe slowly automatically, and you're going to be more calm within yourself. So coming back to what does it mean to consciously breathe? To know that we are connected to this vast universe through our breath. With every breath, the universe is going into us, and with every breath, we are getting back to the universe. If you're able to see this entire experience of breathing to be sacred, if you're able to feel it, then what happens is you bring great attention to the movement of breath. Today, with a very fast-paced world, what is happening is we do not have time to breathe fully. Let us take this opportunity to breathe completely into your lungs. Not so much. Let us use the entirety of your lungs. And make sure as you're breathing in, your abdomen moves out. And as you're breathing out, your navel moves towards your spine and your abdomen moves inside. Many of you are probably doing the opposite of it. So it is important to see the entire movement of your breath. See your abdomen move out and move in, and feel the breath move out of you into the universe. It is a connecting point with it. Imagine the entire universe is connected to us in this breath. To breathe with this awareness, say even for 9 to 10 times a day, even if you're going to do consciously only for 9 times a day, I would say it's going to be immensely helpful in calming down your mind.
Wow. When you say 9 times a day, do you mean 9 breaths or 9 moments?
9 cycles of breath.
Okay. What does a cycle look like?
A cycle of breath, it involves an inhalation and exhalation.
Okay.
So use this breathing and feel it as a very sacred experience.
Yeah. It's
And
interesting because breathing is something that comes so easy. Obviously we're not thinking about it. We're just breathing, but it's amazing that focusing in on our breath can connect us to the universe. Why is that so important for our well-being to feel that connection?
see, Daniel, as you started off this entire podcast, you said, is it possible to be without suffering? The more you are getting used to suffering states, the more it is going to become difficult to walk out of the suffering state.
Mm-hmm.
The more you feel connected to something vaster, that something vaster could be a plant, could be a tree, could be a forest, could be a community, an individual, a family, or the world itself. If you are able to move your attention and feel being part of something vaster, in that experience of connection, what happens is your mind actually lets go of the suffering. It is able to walk out of the suffering state. The more you are in a suffering state, it's a very limited mind. It goes in circles. So these experiences of feeling beyond yourself, these experiences of connecting to the vast universe, is actually going to help you transform the way you have been living your life. It is going to transform your experience of life. And that is why it is very important. I would say, as you said, it's such a difficult time for all of us in the world. And we are probably directly or indirectly affected by this pandemic, every one of them. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say it is easy when you're seeing somebody very close to you being infected, or somebody who's very close to you struggling, losing one's job. I wouldn't say it is easy, but what I would say is, if you nurture a beautiful state, you're going to be that source or that light to help the other person. Mm-hmm. If you move into anxiety looking at their suffering, if you're going to move into fear looking at their problems or obstacles that they're facing, you're not going to be that light. Mm-hmm. So I would say every one of us have to practice meditation, will have to nurture that calm, will have to nurture the beautiful state in order to help everyone around. Mm-hmm. And help oneself.
And that's what I wanted to talk about is it possible that a shift in human consciousness can start with the individual? Because our whole world needs this. How does the individual help that shift happen?
Krishnaji and myself actually share this phenomenon of soul circle. Mm-hmm. Soul circle is basically to show that you are connected to a few people. You are definitely connected to the vast universe, but there is a greater connection with a set of people with whom you come into existence. Mm-hmm. And it is more like the aspen trees. If you look at on a hilltop in the aspen trees, there are individual trees on a hilltop. But if you go beneath the soil, below the earth, it will be all connected in roots. Though they stand as separate individuals, they are all connected in one's root. Mm-hmm. What happens to one individual tree actually happens to the rest.
Wow.
So if one individual is going to nurture a beautiful state, you would be that tree which is able to support the rest of the trees.
Wow.
So that is why even if you are one single individual who is going to nurture that beautiful state, you can actually impact so many people in your life. And we also talk about the other phenomenon, the phase transition, that it is like if certain number of people in this world become awakened or consciously nurture a beautiful state, it is possible to transform the entire world. It is like the phase transition that happens on a lake. If, say, a lake is slowly becoming, droplets of water is slowly turning into ice. It takes a while, but after a certain point of time, the entire water turns into a sheet of ice. But it doesn't happen one droplet after the other droplet like what happened in the beginning.
Just that incredible.
It transforms after a period, after a certain number of individuals are transformed, the world transformation happens.
That's just amazing. And I love that people listening can feel the one person matters. Yourself as an individual, you can change your own consciousness and then become a leader to so many other people.
Absolutely. Like the hub tree in the forest, each hub tree which is taller than the rest, taking all the sunlight, making more food, actually it actually nurtures 47 other trees in the forest. So each hub tree makes more food because it has the ability to have greater sunlight, is like that individual in a beautiful state.
Mm-hmm.
You have the state of being by which you can impact so many lives.
Wow. If someone listening is in the position of leadership, or most of us know people, and we're a position of leadership, whether it's in our family or in our community. What is the difference of leading with peace versus leading in a state of suffering, whether that's anxiety or anger or fear or whatever it is? What's the difference between leading in those two states?
It's a huge difference, Daniel. If I have to go into explaining to you the laws of consciousness which we share with the world, your consciousness is constantly signaling to the vast universe. And if you are in a state of separation, which you are definitely when you're coming with anger or fear or insecurity or aggression, it is a state of separation. When you are leading with a state of separation, what is happening is you are signaling to the world or to the universe that you are open to problems. You're opening yourself to chaos. But if you are able to feel that you are one, if you're able to feel a greater peace, a greater calm, greater connection with the world around you, you are signaling to the universe that you're opening your life to synchronicities and miracles. I would say miracle does not happen with positive thinking or with aggression or with it needs a state of being. You need to make sure that you are in this place of connection. Because only in connection you are actually signaling the universe that you're opening yourself to greater synchronicities in life.
I think a lot of people, especially in America right now, we're looking for a miracle, I think you could call it. But really some real change needs to occur in our country when it comes to the racial divide. And there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of fear around that. Is there a way to approach this? Is there a way to do
But
this without?
we really can't gain peace from anger. Because what will happen is history will rewrite itself in a different form probably. But that is really not going to help. But if you're able to come from this place of deep connection without that anger, it is possible to arrive at peace, right? Instead of like building on anger and fueling on anger where one community is against the other, anger is never going to bring us peace. And that's why Krishnaji and I are like constantly talking about evolution in consciousness is what is needed. Because we are used to a thinking where we constantly separate ourselves from the other. That has to go. Where we constantly separate ourselves from the other based off on class, based off on religion, based off on caste in India. Like every country has its own way of dividing. That has to go. That separation driven thinking has to be eliminated from our consciousness if we really want to live together as one human species. You see, America, it is between the blacks and the whites. In India, it is the caste. In China, it is the class. Or in the Middle East, it is the religion. We are constantly believing or creating an identity around one and thinking that we are superior to the other. That has to go. How can that be? We are one. We are one in the way we experience life. We are one in our fears. We are one in our pandemic over here. And we are one in our insecurity. We are one in our need for love, our experience of love. Everything is, we are one over there. We are one human species. We are used to kind of driving ourselves from a separation driven thinking. That is because of the civilization, the way it has evolved. Unfortunately, it is not the right thing that has to be there within us. It has to disappear.
It does. So when it comes to bringing in a spiritual practice in our lives to make the difference in making that disappear, to getting rid of the divide wherever someone is listening from in the world, what are the first steps?
To know that when you are experiencing fear on the other person, when the other person is experiencing fear, the experience of fear is just the same.
Mm-hmm.
The situation can be different, the external circumstance can be different, but the experience of fear is just the same. The pain that you have or the pain that the other has because of losing someone in life is just the same. It is not different. The way you want to be loved, we want to be loved, right? We want to be cared for, and the way the other is expecting to be loved and cared for is just the same. It is not different. If you are able to move away from the superficial differences, yes, definitely there are differences. My skin color is different from yours, but in the experience we are just the same. If we are able to move away from the differences, that you are white, I am brown, or you belong to a different nation, I belong to a different nation, you belong to a different religion, I belong to a different religion. If you're able to move away from the superficial differences, and if you're able to connect at the experience of a human being, you have to nurture this ability to constantly connect to that human oneness of the human experience. And then you wouldn't hold on to it. You wouldn't hold on to, say, an identity of being a brown or identity of being a white. You really don't care about it, because we are human beings.
I love that.
And
That
at the
is
end
so
of it,
beautiful.
the way I love, the way I experience love, and the way you experience love is just the same. There is no difference in it at all. It is because of the mind that is sticking on to the superficial identities, there is a problem if you become more aware of it.
So part of this is this walking away from these identities that we built up for ourselves.
Yes, being individualistic, building that identity. We are never individual. I don't exist if not for so many people around me. How can you exist independently? The idea of an individual is very different. We are together. We are together as a species. We are together in this world. That constantly separating oneself, this longing to be different, this longing to be superior, I really don't understand.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And this reminds me of the ego from Eckhart Tolle. A lot of this stepping away from the things that we have and the things that we purchased and the way that we look and all of these different things that we have added on to ourselves to, again, become superior. That is what so much of this human life, especially I know for a fact in America, that has almost been like, pounded into our heads that we need to be something really big and we need to make a lot of money and we need to have the fanciest house, all of those different things.
You probably need that. You probably want wealth. You want to own nice stuff because you can have a nice ride in a great car. But why should it make you feel separate from others?
And superior.
Why is it coming from a place of lack? Because if it's coming from a place of lack, you want to constantly say that you're different, you're great, you are superior. But why should you do that?
Yeah. I worked on this several years ago and it made a huge difference in my life. I'm wondering, what are the steps for our listeners if they're like, you know what, that is me. I have been trying to separate myself from everyone and appear superior to everyone. What are some of the first steps? Is it that connection to the universe? Is that breathing? Is that the first step?
So you can start breathing and bring greater attention to yourself at times of suffering, at times of pain, and know that somebody else is experiencing the same pain. At times when you feel so much of fear, when you feel everything that you have created is going to disappear in front of your eyes, please understand the person next to you is also feeling the same. If the other person is also experiencing the same insecurity, it is the same experience. That is to come back again and again to the experience of a human being. Because when you're so totally disconnected with that experience, that's when you hold on to the feeling of being superior or wanting to show off to the other. It's a very tribal way of looking at stuff. So there is a large part of humanity which believes that human beings are tribalistic in nature. They have this tribal instincts. But I would say many ancient cultures also had this constant experience of feeling one, experiencing being one with the entire universe. They had those profound experiences of connection, They had this profound experiences of deep processes that allowed them to move beyond those limiting identities that they've created. And it has been a part of every ancient civilization. Probably right now we're all missing it.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea of being able to live together as one in that connection to the universe. You talked about earlier the serene mind practice and how part of our brain is actually swollen right now. Can you talk me through that? What is making that part of our brain swollen, and how does the serene mind practice, meditation, help us with this?
Sure. In terms of what is happening to our brains right now, the amygdala region of the brain, that is the center for fear and anger, since we are overly in these emotions these days, it is an overactivated area of your brain. So the neural activity has to move from the amygdala to yet another region, which is the medial prefrontal cortex. And what happens is when you activate medial prefrontal cortex, you will experience calm, you will experience peace, greater connection, and greater intelligence. This involves observation. This involves identifying or knowing what exactly you're feeling, because we are living in a very fast moving world. Nobody knows what we're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So this meditation, though it is short, it's immensely powerful, very potent, because it gets you in touch with the emotion that you are experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
and then allows you to observe the movement of your thinking. Because if there is an emotion of hurt, are you getting back to one past experience that has happened, or is your mind thinking revolving around that experience? Or say if you are in a state of anxiety, are you constantly projecting a future? So if you see anxiety, it is a constant mini horror movies being projected constantly. It need not be true. You're constantly saying everything that you have is going to go away. Everything beautiful about your life is going to go away. That is the movie. So you are going to observe the movement of your thinking. If you're moving back to your past or moving into your future, or if you are in peace and calm and love and joy, you might be in the present moment. So that is an observation. Then it also involves visualization, um, where you see a light or a flame move from the middle of your forehead to the middle of your brain, and you're going to see that flame glow in the middle of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows you to calm very instantly. We have we have many students across the globe using this practice right now, and we also have people who have to make decisions at this point of time, because we don't want leaders to make decisions from a state of anxiety. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to kind of create more chaos in the external world for yourself because of your inner state. With an inner frictional state, what we can attract is only greater friction outside. So we want you to calm yourself. And I would say repeat this serene mind practice as many times whenever you feel disturbed, because it does not take you much time. It is only 3 minutes long. If you
Mm-hmm.
want, I can lead all of them through one.
Yes. Yeah. We did that last time and I absolutely loved that. Before we do, and we'll wrap up with that, but before we do, I wanted to ask about if someone's noticing as they're taking that inventory of what's going on in their brain, if they notice they do continue going back to the suffering, whether it's anxiety or fear or anger, what's the next, is there a next step, or in the practice of doing this alone, does that help people walk out of it?
There's definitely next steps, Daniel. See, what we are doing from the academy to across the globe is we are actually leading people through mini processes, a 3 hour long processes, where people can join online and do it. We are also holding the limitless field meditation for one to experience profound connection the with the universe, or profound greater states. So we are touching people again and again. Um, as I said, if you live your life from a limited self, you're going to feel very constricted. When you live your life in suffering, it is a very limiting experience of life. So what we are doing with definitely serene mind is a very good start, but there are deeper practices. There are profound meditations, there's hard long meditations, there is also the limitless field. You were there in the event, right? And the same limitless field meditation, where hundreds of thousands of people gather from across the globe. Though it is online, we are not physically present there, but we are connecting to people, touching many lives. And so what happens is, when you have these profound experiences in consciousness, when you are able to move beyond yourself, it actually allows you to walk out of suffering states much more easily. Right now, we are getting used to being in suffering states. I feel that is a biggest danger. I feel probably the virus would go, or probably we would find a solution or a vaccine, but the suffering state is going to be a problem, because you're getting used to it more and more and more right now. I would say it is time to recognize and walk out, because from a suffering state, you really we can't handle the situation. What needs to happen is a greater awareness. What needs to happen is a greater intelligence to flower in each and every one of us.
And we talked
So
about in the
I would
last
say deeper
conversation.
processes, deeper meditations, deeper processes, um, the limitless field meditation, everything is going to kind of help you, allow you to walk out of the suffering state, arrive at greater calm, and lead with greater clarity.
I'm going to link the resources that you guys have in the show notes. And I remember in our last conversation, we talked about an addiction to that suffering. As human individuals, we have become addicted to it. That's what we know, and that's what we cling to. So I'll share that conversation as well. But I would love it if you would lead us in the serene mind practice.
Sure, definitely I'll do that. Please close your eyes. Allow your breath to be deep and slow. Identify the exact emotion that is arising within you right now. Is it anxiety, anger, frustration, insecurity, loneliness, or sorrow? Or is it joy, calm, peace, love? Just identify the emotion. Do not try to change anything. As this emotion is rising within you, observe the movement of your thinking. Are you moving back to a past experience? Or are you obsessing about your future? Or are you in the present moment? Now see a flame in the middle of your eyebrows. See this flame move inward to the middle of your brain. And allow this flame to glow in the middle of your brain. Bring a gentle smile onto your face. Open your eyes whenever you feel you're ready.
Thank you so much, Preethaji. That is so powerful. And it just takes a few minutes. It's incredible, the power of that. So thank you so much. Before I let you go, I do want to ask you if there's anything you want to share with our viewers or listeners as we close this conversation.
It is a difficult time for everyone. And all I would say is every one of us have to act responsibly. You have to take into consideration definitely your well-being and also the well-being of the other. If you are able to nurture connection, please understand you will get immense support from this universe. There will be great protection, there will be great support coming your way if you're able to think about the whole.
That's beautiful. The support from the universe. Incredible. Preethaji, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I so appreciate it. I just love talking to you. And of course, I just love all of the resources you have available online as well. So thank you so much.
So wonderful to have you, to see you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Preethaji. I love talking to her every time I get the chance to talk to her. I learned so much from her. And all of her resources, as I mentioned, I'm going to post those all in show notes. You can find links to all of that. If you enjoyed the Serene Mind practice that we just went through, you'll also be able to find that as a bonus here on the podcast that you can come back to many times. And also, like I mentioned, there is another conversation with Preethaji available in this podcast. I'm going to link that as well because we talked about so many great things, including, like I said, that addiction to suffering. So much good stuff here. And I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. And I want to thank you for your time. Have a great day.